For this lesson, you are going to learn how to set up columns for a newsletter and how to make a newsletter very visually appealing. The document that we are going to open to practice from is the newsletter document from the BizEd directory, and it's in the Lesson 6 folder. Okay. Now, what we're going to say is that we're creating a newsletter and we want this to be in 2 columns. So if I go to the Page Layout tab and I choose Columns and just choose 2, what happens is what I wanted to be the title of my newsletter ends up being included as part of the columns. And so I'm going to just undo this because what I want to do is I want to leave all of this information across the top, and starting with this Hampton Hills line, I want to have that organized into 2 columns. So to make that happen, what I'm going to do is go to Columns, More Columns, and I'm going to say 2 once again, but rather than the whole document, I'm going to say apply to this point forward, and then it will take place wherever my cursor is on down. Notice that with my 2 columns, they're set to be equal width right now, but if I wanted one column to be narrower, like a newspaper, table of contents, or something like that, I could just deselect that and then I could adjust the amount of spacing. But I'm going to go ahead and leave them at equal column width. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to practice moving some things around, and so we're going to go to View and show this document as one page so we can see it as we're working with it. The other thing we're going to turn on is we're going to go back to the Home tab to turn on the paragraph and spacing symbols so that we can see what's been done here with this. Now, I'm going to say that I want to highlight this section of my newsletter, Don't Forget to Pay Your Rent. And so what I want to do is I want to add some borders around this. If I go to my Home tab, which is where I'm at, there is an icon right here that allows me to control the borders and spacing. And what I want to do is I want to add borders all the way around the outside of this. I could just choose to have left, right, top, or bottom, but I want to have outside borders, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now that I've set the border, I can control the column width as far as how fat the border lines and things might be by going into this Borders and Shading button, and this would allow me to maybe make my border be a little thicker if that's what I wanted. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to add a fill now, and sometimes when you're setting this up, you want the software or your textbook will ask you to use a particular shade or hue, and as you mouse over all of these colors you can see that it'll tell you which particular background to use as you're working with this. And so we're going to go with the dark blue, text to lighter 40%, and so I just keep scrolling until I find that particular one. Next, I'm going to reopen the border button here. I'm going to go into Border and Shading, and I'm going to choose this Custom button, which is going to allow me to make a few more changes as I'm working with this. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some additional styles here. If I keep scrolling, oh, that's for all of my borders, isn't it? I think I'm looking for, here we go, the Shading tab. That's going to be ever so much more helpful. Now the fill automatically defaults to the color that I chose to fill from my fill bucket up here. So if I want to do something other than that, I can get into more colors this way, or I can add some different styles and patterns. And if I scroll down below all of the percents, you'll see that I'm able to choose different options here. And what we are asked to practice with this particular exercise is a light trellis. Now, this lets me preview what it's going to look like. it still looks a little bit darker, and so what I'm going to do is I want to just lighten up that new trellis feature that I added, and it asks us to use white, darker 15, what does this read when you read it? It's the correct one. White background, 15%. And so now that makes it a little bit lighter as I'm working with it. And so now I've added just a little bit of texture without being obnoxious to my little box that I'm working with. Now, sometimes you want to add a border around an entire page when you create it. If you go to the Page Layout tab and we go to Page Borders right here, that allows us, this would allow us to set just standard kinds of borders if you'd want a dotted line or whatever around. Or you can go to the Art option and have a little fun with all these various shapes and symbols, which I'm sure you've explored before. This exercise wants us to look for the firecracker, and I'll see if I can find that easily here. I think I might have missed it. We might be choosing something else. So it was a red firecracker. I guess that would help to look for the color as we're going through it, and if I'm not finding it, then I think that I'm just going to choose something else. Oh, there it is. Okay. So everything exists that you're asked to use. Okay. Now, once you've added a very lovely border around, you may want to also add a little bit of a hint of color to your page. And this especially works for electronic newsletters rather than print. Obviously, the more colors you get when you print something, the more expensive it is. But we're just going to go with a very pale red. It asks us to use this red accent to lighter 80%. So whatever color hue you're asked to use, just mouse over until you see that particular color or shade. As you know, working with clip art makes newsletters fun. You want newsletters to be eye-catching. And in this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little clip art with the Hawaiian Luau planned exercise. And there's different ways of entering this stuff, but if you go to, first of all, put your cursor where you want your clip art to be. And if I go to clip art here, what I'm asked to search for, first of all, is, because it's a Hawaiian luau, is to search for Hawaii. And you might be prompted where it says, the first time you do this, it will ask you, do you want to also access clips online? Go ahead and say yes. And so you're obviously able to scroll down and see what the different images are that you might want to use. This one looks like perhaps a good clip art one. And so if you just go to the arrow here and click on Insert, it plugs it into your particular file. Now, because of this, the size of it, and because my cursor was after the heading, it moved it to the next line. We're going to also insert a flag, and we're going to insert that one where it says Independence Day. And so now I'm going to search for flag. And for this particular one, look for a flag that looks sort of like a real image as you're working with it. And we're going to play with that a little bit in coming up here. Okay, so as we continue on here, you want to make sure that your rulers are showing. I'm going to go ahead and close out my clip art here. And if your rulers are not showing, you can go to this button right here where it says View Ruler, and that will turn them on because we want to see that information. Sometimes it's important to have a clip art or image be a particular shape or size. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to start by working with the little luau image that we found. And we're going to notice that when we click on it, if we are asked to have our clip art be an exact size, for example, let's say we were asked to have a height of 1.15, we can come and make those changes and adjustments right there. And then it'll adjust, it may adjust the width a little bit to match with what it is you've been working with. And in this particular one, if we wanted to see if we move it so it's next, we can't because it's still too wide. So we might need to adjust its size. But we're actually going to do something else as we're working with this. Now, let's select the flag for a moment. Once we do that, you can still use these align features. If it would be aligned differently, you could center or left or whatever justification that you might want to use for that. And what we're going to do next is let's come back to the luau image, and we're going to practice changing how this appears within the paragraph of text. So if I want my text to wrap around this rather than having it be on a line by itself, I can come to my Format tab, which only is available when you have your clip art selected. So if you're not seeing the Format tab up here, select your image so that the handlebars are around it and look at the Format tab right here. And what you're going to look at as options at this point in time is text wrapping. And you can see there's a whole bunch of options to choose from. We're going to choose the tight option. You get little icons here as far as what might be going on. I'm going to choose tight. And as soon as I do that, you can see that because of where my image is now, it's wrapping it so that all the text is on the right. Well, I'd like some of the text on the left and some of the text on the right, so I can kind of play and click and drag and adjust this around until I'm happy with how the text is wrapping as we go through that. Now, next, we're going to make some changes to this flag image, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my image is wide enough, because I'm going to actually move this text so that it's on top of it, and we're going to adjust the flag image so that we can definitely read it easy enough. So if you need to adjust the width of your image just a little bit for this next step, go ahead and do that. The type of text wrapping that we are going to do is we're going to say we would like our image to be behind the text, meaning we want the text on top of it. Okay? Now, it turns out after I do this, I'm going to need to, adjust the height a little bit so that it all fits. It's a little bit hard to read, so we're going to continue to make some changes to this image here so that we can still read our text as we are working with it. And so once again, with your handlebars around your image, there's a couple of things that we can change. The first thing we can change is the brightness, and if you mouse over these options, you can see that it gets your image very dark to very light, but still is rather hard to read. So actually we're not going to make any changes at all, and I accidentally selected one of them, so I'm going to go back and select normal. Where you're going to be able to make some additional changes is in this contrast. And once again, as you mouse over here, you're seeing that it's now some of the same changes you can make to images when you're playing with them on your cameras or your phones, you can also make here. But the change we're going to make is in the recolor option. And each of these recolors has a name as you go through it. If you mouse over, it tells you what the name of that particular variation is. So if you're asked to use a particular variation, and the one that we're going to be using is this washout variation. And so if you're asked to use a particular, it'll tell you to format and recolor in this case, and add a washout feature to this that allows you to choose that, where now we can still read our text. But if you were working with any of these other options, the nice thing is you can mouse over. If you're curious what a particular change might do for you, you can mouse over and it allows you to see what those particular images look like. So we're going to stop here right now. The next section will have you working with some auto shapes and some working with both shapes and the smart art. And the other thing I'll just point out here is with the paragraph symbols turned on, you can see where you inserted your new columns here. If I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you know what, I would like to move some of this information to the next column. If I come to my insert here and or we'll come back to that one later. So that's it for this first lesson.